but this is just going to be a nice, small, and close-knit user group with Mark, but I'll pass it over to Cindy to kick us off.
Well, thank you, Zach. And thanks for you all that showed up today and for the February user group meeting here in Austin. Certainly feeling a lot more like normal Austin with gorgeous 80-degree weather. Oh my God, it was beautiful today. But if I look tired and sound tired, it's because of last week. I'm still just gonna, I'm done with blaming 2020. I'm just gonna blame last week now for pretty much everything. But hopefully everyone that's here from the Austin user group that's local to Austin is doing well. Chris, Zach, and I, of course, are happy that you are with us today. You can go to the next slide, Zach. We'll do a few announcements, and again, welcome from all of us, and then hand it over to Marivis and Amy, representing Marivis today, to do a quick little spill about Marivis, and then we'll send it over to Mark for the content for tonight. Thank you, Mark. And then Chris will wrap us up at the end with some networking opportunities or just Q&A, whatever time allows at that point. So for the announcements, what do we have? First and foremost, speaking of last week and all of the different challenges that spanned quite a bit of just obviously water, power, supplies, now on the recovery part of it, the ability to just get through the week and now refocus on work. If you on the call or if you know someone that's in the Austin user group community, bit of assistance, let us know. Just reach out personally to myself, to Chris, or to Zach. We have some funds available from Salesforce that we can provide, and we want this to go to people who really need it. If you're nervous just about the I don't know, plumbing repair costs that are up front, or food or diapers or whatever that might be, shoot us a note. And again, if you're on the call and you might not personally be in that situation, but you know someone who is, please, again, just let us know. This has been one of the most beautiful things and always seems to show up in these types of time. And I think this is the great thing about the Salesforce community as a whole, is the community aspect really comes to the forefront when we are facing challenges that really does require the collective to be part of the overall solution. And even though Salesforce obviously is out of San Francisco and there's a lot of people who may not have been personally affected by it, the outreach from this community has been wonderful. So again, let us know. If you or someone that's in the Austin Salesforce community that's local to Austin, just please let us know. We'll make sure that we can do our part and continue to help people. Because I know personally on my side, I thought I was through with this, and then yesterday I found a new leak that just happened to pop up. You know, it's 80 degrees. I thought I was done with it when the snow melted. The snow melting reveals other things. So we're through, I think, the big part of it, but there's still things that are trickling in. No pun intended, but that could be water in your ceilings. So yeah, Ezra, make sure there's not anything falling above you. Then also the next announcement, we have a user group. The developer user group meeting is tomorrow, the 25th. So if you're interested in that, make plans to attend. And hi, Patricia, this is your announcement. Nice to see you on. BAM classes are starting in early March, so March 9th. We have a new series of classes, or Patricia has a new series of classes that's starting. Patricia, anything you want to say about this before I move forward?
Well, we have 4 classes that you can take or have your friends take. So give them the link. I'll put it in the chat. We have a very beginner class and a little bit 10 or 15 trailhead badges, and then one where people are trying to get ready to get certified. And then we have a flow class taught by Brian Richter. So we have 4 classes, or you can decide to be a helper. And you can register on Eventbrite if I give you the link.
Thank you.
Thank you. But sorry, it's every Tuesday night in March, starting on the 9th.
Tuesday nights at what time?
6:30 to 8:30.
6:30 to 8:30, Tuesday nights in March. Okay. Thank you for that additional context. I didn't have that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. So we can move forward. And Chris, if you don't mind, before I move forward, since we do have more people joining, and I don't want to repeat myself too quickly, just reiterate that point about the Austin assistance at the end so that we make sure to catch everybody, because we do have some people that have tripled it. Okay, so now moving forward, I want to say a huge thank you to Amy, who's representing Miravis tonight. Miravis has been such a loyal partner of ours as we have navigated the virtual meetings for the past year. Oh my gosh. February of last year was the last time this user group met in person. So that's astonishing. And it's completely surreal. But thank you to Miravis, a wonderful partner that's allowed us to leverage Zoom and the ability to have so many people on. Thank you, Amy, for being here tonight. And I'll just hand it over to you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Amy Harris. And as Cindy mentioned, I'm with Miravis. I'm here filling in for Kate today. And I think you probably all are pretty aware of who we are if it's been a year already since, I can't believe it, but it's been a year since we were in person at Miravis as well. And so we feel it all together. It's really been an interesting 12 months getting to adapt to this virtual environment. But Miravis, we are, of course, a veteran service organization helping vets and mill spouses upskilling in Salesforce careers and hopefully some other tech careers at some point. We're working toward that. We are working on our next cohort date still, so we still don't have an announcement on when that'll be. But we are always looking for volunteers to fill our pipeline for coaching and resume reviews and other ways you can technically support Miravis. So if you're interested in signing up, join us at miravis.org/volunteer, and I'll put that link in the chat as well. We do have a Miravis mixer on the schedule we just added. So Friday, March 19th, if any of you are interested in joining our mixer, please check that out. I'll put that link in the chat as well, along with the password. And then, of course, I don't want to forget to mention sponsorships. We always are looking for sponsors for our cohorts and virtual programs. And since I'm filling in for Kate today, I didn't want to mess that up the way that those little details usually work through. So I left Kate's name here. Go ahead and reach out to Kate if you are interested in doing a sponsorship. And thank you all very much for letting me say hi today. And it's nice to see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. So I get to introduce Mark. And so he's going to be presenting today, Dear Profiles, It's Not Me, It's You, breaking up with profile-based security. Mark has done this session at Cactus Force, other Salesforce events. It's a very well-received session. I've seen it. I'm not going to give you all the details. Mark can give you all the details. But a little bit about Mark. He has a lot of certifications. I'm pretty sure he has over 10 at this point, because I know I have 9. I know he has way more than I do. He functions as a technical architect at Aperio, but he also wears many hats. He can be a technical lead, he can be a Salesforce developer, he can be your BA, he can do strategy, but that might not be his favorite thing. He loves working with the business and implementing technology. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it over to Mark. Thank you for being here today, Mark.
Thank you all for having me. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am using a different earbud than I normally do. So, all right, let's start screen sharing. One thing is I normally have an extra monitor open. Today I don't have the extra monitor here set up with this laptop. So I the chat may not jump up and catch my attention. However, I do like to say I do when I'm presenting and stuff like that, I like it to be very interactive. Feel free to interrupt, ask questions, raise your hand, put stuff in. Like I said, I may not see it in the chat. So, if someone else can, pop up and say, hey, there was this in the chat or another question, and kind of interrupt for those who may not want to say out loud, that's helpful. But in general, feel free to ask questions. I keep it interactive and flow through. Come along as things go, et cetera, to give things here and, ask about stuff. It's the no question too stupid, no question is dumb. We can talk about whatever relates to this. It could be things that are related to kind of what you have in your environment. Just if it's specific to your environment and kind of unique and gets down a certain level of rabbit hole, we kind of table those discussions because I want to make sure that everyone else gets a chance to kind of see the pieces that they like and find useful. So with that, I want to get this Zoom window out of my way and jump into this presentation. Dear Profiles, it's not me, it is you. Who am I? As Zach mentioned, I'm a consultant at Aperio. I specialize in nonprofit and education. That doesn't mean that's all I do. I'm also a co-leader with the Charlottesville, Virginia Community Group. I have 14 times certifications and keep trying to get the systems architect and keep trying to find time. I am a platform champion, formerly known as a lightning champion, so I still haven't changed their new logos because I don't have time for that. A Salesforce MVP, and I coach with a program called Rad Women Code, which is a developer program to teach Salesforce admins who are women or who identify as women how to code in Apex. Please connect with me if we haven't. I see some familiar faces and names, and so in the participant list, I know several of you have actually gotten to meet at events before, but those of you who I haven't, I enjoy connecting with people. So here's my Twitter. You can find me on the Trailblazer community, and then my website, which is there, but I don't update it all that often. I blog occasionally, and that's about it. So you won't find much there. Into the overall content. Dear Profiles, it's not me, it's you. I just can't deal with your metadata codependencies, your rigid inflexibility when trying to deploy. We've been together a long time now, and you always have a place in my org, but I need to see other security models. I had grappled for a long time with the profile versus permission set type of thing. Salesforce often said the best practices, don't use so many profiles, use permission sets. And then the permission sets kind of get out of control and you have to deal with that. And then permission set groups came out and it became kind of a way to, how do I start thinking about this systematically, particularly like as a solution partner, you're often implementing for brand new people, but then you're also often getting hired to come in with an ancient org that has been around for a long time. And so that's where I started trying to think about how to do this and, breaking up. So why the hate on profiles? And Zoom does not want to let me close this window. Okay, there we go. Why the hate on profiles? Okay, so they're monolithic. Everything goes in the profile, right? You've got your page layout assignments, your record type assignments, you've got your field level security, you have which apps you can get to, which tabs you can do. It all lives there in the profile. So there's so much stuff that's kind of shoved together. It's really hard to kind of untangle this. And so you've got this kind of one single source, but at the same time, like you end up having to make the same change for 10 profiles, 20 profiles. You add a new field or add a new object, and you might have to go through and kind of rework a bunch of things. When you try to download them or migrate them with like Ant or use tools other than chain sets, show of hands, how many of you have been personally like victimized by trying to move a profile from one sandbox to like another sandbox or production and just, like it's the worst experience. It's just awful sometimes because these strangest things happen. Oh, wait, you don't have this field? But I did put this field in. Oh, wait, no, sorry, you can't do this. You can't change this in the profile. This has to be a manual step because you can't use standard objects in your chain set. You can't do this. So there ends up being a lot of things like that that just drive you crazy. They are not useful in packages. The same thing that makes them really difficult to work with on this metadata dependency means if you want to try to go to managed packages or unlock packages, they're not going to help you. They will do you no favors. You want to know why every time you install something from an app exchange, you got a new permission set to deal with? It's this. It's this on profiles. And they multiply. Profiles are kind of like that cable drawer. Anyone have a cable drawer? You put the cables in there and you come back and there's more cables than you had in there and they're all tangled up around each other and you like had them, you can even take them, wrap them up in Velcro, put them in there, come back a week later, there's cables you didn't put in there and they're tangled, right? Profiles are that way. They get all messy. They get mixed up. So Salesforce came out with permission set groups. And it's like, is this the greatest thing ever? This sounds like it's wonderful. It's going to do everything. It is the hero. It is here to save the day, or at least some of your sanity. Well, I'm still down with profiles and wish I could do more profiles. But the thing to realize is permission set groups bring benefits, but they're not necessarily the answer. You still have a model that's going to deal with permission sets, groups of permission sets, and the permission set and profiles. The thing is that you can start making it more modular by doing this. And so when you think about it, permission set groups give you this modularity that you've kind of lacked from a profile. You can take and reuse permission sets. So the idea being, you know, we've got some Lego blocks here. I could take this blue block here and put it over on this one and it'd be fine. I could take this yellow block here, add it to this one, it'd be fine. They're reusable along those lines. You can move them from place to place. And that's how you want to start thinking about permission sets and permission set groups. It's these things of functionality or pieces that you can break up into little chunks and you can assemble them as you need to come up with a security model to do the things that you want. The other thing they bring from a benefit is this permission muting. So any of you who have ever worked in other systems on IT will probably think about the fact that there is a definitive deny permission that you can give. You give them this, nope, you can't do this. All right, it overrides any other thing that says they can do this. Well, Salesforce world, there's never been that. Permission set groups have a ability to mute a specific permission. So say you need to have a permission set that's this, you get a permission set from an App Exchange package, and you need to give this same set of permissions to almost everyone in your org, but this group of 5 people doesn't need to be able to create this object or doesn't even be able to create this record. With permission set groups, because you can create a muting permission set, and we'll look at these later, you can actually use the same permission set and say, okay, but for this group of people, this particular permission set group, I'm going to turn off this particular thing. So you don't need to go back and recreate another permission set from a managed package because managed package permission sets don't really let you edit them. The other thing is these are more independent. They move from org to org. And I just want to make sure my Zoom window with the people speaking here is not blocking anyone's view. It's not showing here on the screen. You're seeing the text on the right hand. Good. Okay. So they are greater independence. They're not as tightly integrated with the metadata, so they're easier to move from one sandbox to another to production. There's still some gotchas there and some other things to work with, but because permission sets aren't as tightly integrated and permission set groups aren't as tightly integrated, you can move them a little bit more easily without having all the same considerations around whether or not it has the metadata that you have to pull, what it has to move here, other stuff like that. But the thing is, they're practically speaking, sounds great, sounds fantastic on paper. It's the answer to everything. If all I do is nope, no more permissions or no more profiles, only permission set groups. I will only do those from now on. No more profiles. Sad truth is that's not the case. So let's start off by talking about some key things on security because this adds up. Oh, nice formatting here. What a user can see is never going to be affected by your permission sets. So which records a user can see is always going to be coming by sharing rules. It's going to be the organization-wide defaults or public groups or manual sharing or hierarchies like roles or territory, Apex-based sharing. This is always going to be from sharing here. So you're always going to have that profile permission set. This doesn't change that. Your permission set and permission set groups, because they're just a conglomeration of permission sets, do not change what records a user can see. And that's still going to be the case. There's still going to be that distinction between which records a user sees and which fields they can interact with, which other that. There is one exception to the rule around which records they can see for the profile and permission set. Anyone want to volunteer the two potential thorns that are in the admin side for this? View all and modify all. So those are the two things that really still exist that are often the bane of an admin's existence, because Salesforce relies on them way too much for a lot of things, but they are there. So that's the one exemption that you have, but everything else is really going to be about what a user can do, which apps they can access, which fields they can see, which fields they can edit, which Apex classes they can run, which flows they can interact with. These are all things that are driven by profile and permission set. The other thing is there are some things that just have to live in a profile. You cannot do these in a permission set or permission set group, since they're just, again, a conglomeration of permission sets. So your login security, like login hours, which IP ranges you can log in from, these are still in the profile. So for example, if you have a different setup where this type of people can log in from this IP range, and this type of people can log in from this IP range, but not each other, you can't use the permission set for that. You have to do that. If it needs to be different hours, you're going to need a different profile for it. Page layout assignment is one of the biggest ones, and this is one of the ones why everyone keeps waiting for dynamic forms and dynamic actions to be generally available on every type of object, and Salesforce keeps dragging it out, and it stays in beta here or available there or partially available. But this page layout assignment is one of those, because the thing is, you can only have a page layout assignment per object per profile. Permission sets, the thing about the permission set, why you can't do it with that, is because you can have multiple permission sets. So if you have conflicting page layout assignments, it's not going to really work. Hopefully one day we'll be in the world of dynamic forms and this stuff will go away and we won't worry about those old classic page layouts anymore. But in the meantime, we have to. The other key thing is your profile is a subset. The things that a profile can do is a subset of your license type. So one of the reasons why your license types are based around a profile and you have to pick a license for your profile, well, that's because they're different object capabilities based on that profile. And somewhere on the back end, when you select a profile, Salesforce is going, okay, I'm excluding this or I'm adding this. Permission sets do not need to have a license type. In fact, in a lot of cases, you shouldn't have a license type for a permission set, and they will not be available. However, there's a lot of things you can do. So as we talked about, the Apex class someone has access to. If you're talking about granting access to certain Apex classes or Visualforce pages, and for many people, we've discovered granting access to Apex classes being a brand new thing that admins had to worry about again with the introduction of the security features in Spring 21, where you have to have access on your profile to these Apex classes used behind the scene, or else you can't use the Lightning components. Well, this is one of those scenarios. But you can do that with a permission set, because if, say, you have a standard permission of everyone in our org needs to use these Apex classes, instead of editing 10 profiles, you have it on one permission, and you use a permission set, and you use that in all your permission set groups to cover everyone needing this access to it. Application visibility, which apps people can see. These are things that can live in profiles or permission sets. Probably going to do this in permission set, though. If you've got a lot of apps, a lot of App Exchange stuff, point to this on the permission set side. Your custom and user permissions, these are things that can go into a profile or permission set. External data sources, by all means, put these into a permission set. Object and field permissions, those field level securities, that's there. Record type and tab visibility. So these are the kind of things that you can put into a permission set and make things go. Before we jump into something here, I want to switch gears a little bit and spend a little time actually in an org of working with stuff. So kind of show of hands, who has worked with, anyone has worked with permission set groups so far?
I have, but when I worked
at all,
I could only data load them into existence.
Yeah, uphill both ways in the snow, Zach. But yeah, so that's one of the things. Yes, it was kind of an issue. So the early round, let's take a look at how permission set work, the stuff that you see. Anyone use permission sets regularly, like build your own in your org, or just reuse the ones? Okay. So for some of you, this is a lot of you are used to just doing everything in profiles and changing profiles. So hopefully this will be a kind of not necessarily a life-changing experience, but usually possibly a mindset-changing experience. And I am going to zoom in a bit on this so the text is a little bit easier to read for everyone. I've got a couple permission sets here in this group. A lot of them are kind of standard and they came from some apps. I've got one that I have here that's tested together. Permission set helper, which is an app we'll talk about a little bit later. Our CRM user, which is a kind of a standard Salesforce one they throw out there. Console users, whether or not you can access the console, and Classic, that's actually a key one for a couple things. So your permission sets honestly look just like a profile when you try to go edit them for the most part. If your interface on profiles doesn't look like this, you are probably using the old classic way of managing profiles, and you are causing yourself lots of pain and anguish on a daily basis that you could probably avoid. We've got our same things here that we do on the others. You know, you look at a permission set, one of the things you'll find will be missing here is you can select the record types that are available, but you can't do a page layout assignment. And it shows an object with no record types, which is lots of fun. All right. And, you know, you cannot change this, but we come in here, we've got our same object settings, we have our same class settings. It's basically the same as a profile. The idea, though, is that we can start making these a little bit more modular, make them work. Permission set groups look very much the same, but slightly different. Permission set groups, you'll find a couple things here that are a little bit different. So one of the things is you don't get to set objects and stuff like that, because remember, these are just a combination of permission sets. So what you get to do is select what permission sets are in the group, and you get to select what permissions you mute. Down below that, you have this read-only view. So I can go to the object settings. I can see what this is granting me access to from objects based on what permission sets are in the group, but that's it. So I can see this is coming through here. I've got this. I've got the individual permissions that come from this group. The thing to keep in mind is that because people can be in multiple permission sets, multiple permission set groups and profiles, right now there is not a single pane of glass in Salesforce to go, this is the definitive, this person can do this person can do this, and this, and this, and this, and this, based on all the things that come together for this individual. When you are looking at your permission sets, adding and removing is pretty easy, straightforward. Same as you would be on the others. You can come in and do add permission set. You can combine them. You can remove them. I can add, let's see, that data mask one won't do because it's tied to a license is no longer available. Let's look at, this one should be not tied to anything, I think. So now it's done, and now it's added, and it's done some things to the system, and I can see it in my group. If I come back to my group, I would be able to see what changed as an overall net permission change. The thing I can't see is what changed as a result of just adding that permission. So there's not really a good way to say, okay, this is what added or what was adjusted. Muting permission sets, it's the same kind of thing. So I can come in and do permission set. I pick here, and with my muting permission set, I can have one per permission set group. I can't have two, I can't have three. This is one of the few things what I really kind of agree with here is that you shouldn't have more than one muting permission set on your permission set group, because then you end up with too much trouble trying to figure out what's been turned off. But this does add in, and the difference here is when you come in and you look at, say, object settings, you'll see the way that it does the layout is a little bit different. So if instead of account, keep in mind this doesn't necessarily know what I have in my existing permission set. All it knows is that I have stuff. But when I come here to edit, you'll see things like visible and available. And you'll see if any of the permission sets add or something, but you also have this column now for muted. You can only edit the muted column. But I can see what's been granted by the system here. Let's look at an object that has a little bit more stuff on it, say contacts. I can come into contacts and, all right, change. I can come into my contact record. This one has some permissions, and I can come in and I can mute them. So say, for example, my permission set includes one of those that gave view all and modify all. Well, the first thing I can do is take that away. So I don't have to go through and change the whole permission set. I don't have to go back and undo it. I can, for this group of people, say, no, I'm just going to take away view all and modify all. So notice when we had that, if I uncheck these and put this back in, when we look at the overall permission set group and what it has available, we'll now find that view all and modify all is back on contact.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So with muting, so you do the muting in the permission set group, or you do it inside the actual permission set inside the permission set group?
You do it in a muting permission set that is inside the permission set group. So
Okay.
every permission set has muting permission sets available to it for that group.
So if
now
you
keep in mind, this doesn't carry over to other groups.
So if you have, say, 5 permission sets in one permission set group, and all of them grant like view all, modify all on accounts, if you do mute on view all or modify all, will that override all of the permissions for, or the view all, modify all for those 5 permission sets in that group? Cool.
Absolutely. Yep. So say, for example, you have a criteria that no matter what permission set they get, they don't get view all or modify all, ever. You can actually have that in your permission set, that if you ever add another permission set that has this, you can go through and create a muting permission set that takes away, that mutes view all and modify all on everything, every object, because you can select fields and objects that aren't in there. It shows you which ones they have access to already, but you can still select the ones that aren't. So you can actually make it so that no matter what permission set you add, no one ever has view all and modify all under the permission set group.
That sounds nice.
Anything to have, you know, you'll deal with places that have high security and the auditors are high on it. So being able to point to an auditor and say, look, we put this in place and this prevents anyone who isn't in this group or this group from getting view all and modify all on all objects. It's a pretty useful thing. So this is what we're looking at for permission sets, permission set groups. The thing is true, you can also do custom permissions the same way, tie that in. Plug in my mouse real quick, because it's still nice to give me an alert only like when it was down to 5%.
At least it's not a Apple mouse where you have to charge it at the bottom.
Yeah, no, I still use one of the ones that I can actually just plug in and still use like a wired mouse. So the thing is, you can set it up, you can have these permissions, you can get this resultant group. The thing to just keep in mind is that you're not getting the whole permission. There is still a combination of their profile plus any permission set groups plus any random permission sets. And the muting only works for this permission set group. So if you give someone a permission set directly that has view all and modify all in our example, they've got view all and modify all again. If you put it in their profile and you've got it muted in the permission set group they belong to, it still has the view all and modify all. But other than that, your permission set groups are kind of the same thing as creating a permission set. You click new, You tell it what you want for permissions. Give it a name, give it a description, and go. And then it lets you set it up and run and configure it. You can manage users. You can see who's assigned to it. You can also see them from the user page. So we come in and do users. If I'm on an individual user, I can do this. And I can still come to their user page and still check on an individual user and say, I want to give them this permission set group. I want to give them this. I want to give them that. Same as they would be up under the direct where you can add it. You can select permission set groups here and say which ones are in for permission set groups. Just note this is getting a little bit clustered here of a lot of stuff. You have permission set assignments that are activation required. For those of you who don't know, activation is that session activation. So this is a permission sets that require a higher level of security in order to have access to it. Permission set assignments, your general permission sets that are here that you have individually. Permission set groups, these are the groups. Permission set licenses for those who haven't come across. These are things that are put out by Salesforce primarily. I know they're trying to get partners to switch over to them, but the idea is that you get permission set licenses available to things like surveys or Einstein Analytics or, Tableau CRM. You get access to various different things here based on permission set licenses. Salesforce Field Service is an example of a permission set license. Pardot is an example of a permission set license that gets incorporated with it. So you have those. Groups, public group membership, queue membership. These are things that entirely relate to what records you can see or sharing targets for the most part. Team, somewhat similar, managers in the role hierarchy, etc. These are the kind of things. They're still the same kind of world as far as this goes with what you can see, what you can do. Yeah, Dear Experience Cloud, sorry, Community Cloud, sorry, no wait, what is it now? Salesforce Sites. So any question about the mechanics here, permission sets, profiles, permission set groups, before we jump into the getting out of the mechanics of how to do it and into the when, where, and why to do it?
Hey Mark, this is George. I do have one question on the mechanics side. And it has to do with the muting and the manage assignments piece to it. So here's, I just made this up, use case. We want all the vice presidents to have full cred on accounts, opportunities, and cases, except, so this is where the muting function is going to come in. So in that permission set group, we don't want the vice president of HR to be able to delete cases, okay? So when how do you mute only for the vice president of HR when you do the manage assignments, but not everybody else? How does that work?
You don't. You don't. They have to be separate permission set groups. So what it does is it mutes for the entire permission set group.
Okay.
So the idea being you could take and have a permission set group that is essentially the identical, and this is all the people who have this permission set group get this, and they use the same underlying permission sets for it. But the people who are in this permission set group, we chose to mute that. And if you think about it, the trade-off here is if you had to manage, say, access to cases, you wanted to manage access to cases. Well, typically that would mean editing 5 profiles, 10 profiles, 20 profiles to change that, or might involve creating 3, 4, 5 different permission sets to apply to people as individuals to keep track of. When you talk about it from a permission set group, you manage one permission set that relates to case management, or 2 permission sets that relate to this one is view all and this, or this one has view and relates to read only. Say, for example, you have a routine scenario where you need auditors to come in. You don't want auditors editing anything. They don't want to have access to anything. They don't want to be able to edit anything, but they want to access everything. So you might have a permission set that relates to, all right, giving just view access to stuff. And then you might have a permission set that involves editing everything. And you pick that. And the thing is, you can use those and go, okay, these are the permissions for case management. They can view cases or they can edit and manage cases. And I'm going to pick this based on their persona next up on how to do this. And so this is what we're going to get ready to talk into, is the kind of logistics piece of how to kind of navigate that. But essentially, you would use the same permission sets, but in this permission set group, you would mute the permissions that you didn't want to have. And this other one, you could leave them alone.
No, thank you. That's brilliant. So it's the ability to reuse a permission set group with some muted features for a second permission set group.
Right.
Thanks.
Right. So you can keep using your permission sets over and over again and make them more reusable, because you don't need to make a new one just to take away a certain permission. And that's really common. Like, for example, the one I have on managed packages. So managed package permission sets get upgraded when they upgrade their package and they change that managed permission set. The problem is, since you can't edit that permission set, when you clone it and make your own, you've already lost. So now every time a new update comes out, you have to turn around and update it and update your existing permission set. If you had to make 2, 3, 4 permission sets for that one managed package, that could be a lot of work keeping up with their updates on it. Every time they add a new field, every time they add a new class, you might have to track this stuff down. Whereas if you can use their out of the box and say, okay, I'm going to use this out of the box, but I have this one set of users that I just need to take this away from, means you're not making your own custom permission set for that anymore. You're now working with their permission set and going, this is fine, I just need to take this away. And if you need to combine it with we have this other thing we need to add, because the way we use it for working with the widgets object, we also need to have these same people have access to the, who's what's it object. You make a permission set that goes along with those and attach them. So you use those two permission sets in conjunction. But the idea is you're not reinventing the wheel every time you get something from a new managed package, or every time you need to create something. You can have more flexibility when they apply and less places that you have to, as a result, manage the end access or the individual access to individual systems and processes. So it's a little bit of your profile, think of it as a person building out to some degree, and permission sets and permission set groups are a little bit more from a data level into the person kind of way of operating. And it actually looks a lot like, if you start mapping it out and thinking about how it works, it looks a lot like the old March Madness brackets that people used to do with the college basketball doing March. And I'll actually show an exercise of doing a March Madness bracket, except for it's a Persona Madness bracket instead, for how to pull these things together. So any other questions on the mechanics before we get into the who, what, where, when, and whys of things?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Could you use permission set groups to override org-wide sharing? So if you had public read write on accounting or on accounts, could you use the permission set groups to mute that?
So that is, again, kind of going back to one of the things. Profiles, permission set groups do not change in any way which records a person can see, except for that view all and modify all permissions. Only the sharing rules, the organization-wide default, the sharing rules, the public group, the manual sharing, hierarchy role/territory, those are the ways that you deal with sharing records. So your profile will say which fields you can work with, which objects you can see, but it doesn't say which records you can see in general, except for that whole view all and modify all. The visibility on records really comes from your individual sharing targets and mechanisms for sharing. So that's always going to kind of rely that way. Adding people to a permission set group doesn't actually change the sharing, what records they could see. It'd be nice if you could use it as a sharing target when it made sense, but unfortunately that's not the case right now. It still is just in the which objects and fields you can access, which apps you can access, and the underlying stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Personas. Anyone here work with personas? So common thing, if you're in the consulting world, you probably hear it a lot. If you have to work with development and stuff like that, you'll hear it a lot. Personas can be really complex or really simple things. In this case, I'm really just talking about a persona representing a group of users. It's these commonalities between them. It's their motivations or goals, pain points or characteristics. It is not Bob from accounting or Janet from HR or Paul from, wherever. These aren't a persona is not an individual in your organization, but it's a kind of amalgamation of these different attributes or characteristics that kind of come together. So when we're talking about a persona, this is one of those things that actually helps you kind of define where things are. Some cases you can have a really formal process where you go through and do a whole bunch of things. Some cases you just have something along the line of VP and executive and, finance department, this department, that department. These are ways that can really help you with thinking out how you break down your security model and what needs to go where. So for example, if it's really super generic, as a Salesforce user, I need to view reports. Okay, well, if you're going to make it so that every single person in your org views reports, this may not be a great place for a permission set. This is something that really just go ahead and turn on that system permission in your profile for the profiles that you're using so that everyone has it. It's just so generic. Everyone's going to need it. Everyone's going to have it. This is going to have to be everything for them. If we're talking about Chatter and everyone's going to use Chatter, go ahead and include it in your profile. If we're talking about tasks and activities and events and everyone's going to use those, go ahead and put it in the profile so that's one less place to keep track of. Because if it's always going to be everyone, that's a good thing to put in the profile so you don't have to worry about it. If, for example, it's talking about a group of users, a persona or subset of users, and it's that kind of whole hierarchy, you might think about them as being a permission set group. So from here, you might have finance users, and there'd be a permission set group for all finance users. Traditionally, a lot of cases, this was the profile, but if we talk about it from permission set groups, again, profiles are monolithic. They're all in the profile, whereas if we separate them into permission set groups, we can reuse our underlying permission sets to drive what goes in those profiles or in those permission set groups, because those personas are largely doing the same kinds of things. For example, we talk about viewing cases and editing cases. So finance department might need to view cases because they relate to reconciliation. So say it's an organization that does work on stuff and they're going to have to deal with the billing and they may need to be able to see cases for that. Well, if you've made a permission set for viewing cases and you give that to the finance department, you can use that same permission for the security audit that also needs to view cases. And you can give that to this group that needs this to view cases. So again, it's in that reusability. But basically, if you have this large group of people, say vice presidents who can do this, it's the finance department, the HR department, the whichever department you're talking about, these can all be in as kind of your permission set groups. These big high-level categories of groupings of people are where permission set groups really do well. One of the things to keep in mind, you cannot nest permission set groups. So you can't put a permission set group inside of another permission set group. That's somewhere on the roadmap for security, but last time I heard from the product manager, it wasn't coming soon. So you still have to put it together with individual permission sets. You can't take and build a permission set group that has all the things you wanted and then attach that permission set group to another permission set. Ideal world, eventually that will happen, but in the meantime, that's not the case. One of the last scenarios to really look at is as a finance department user or human resources user or marketing user. So going back into that object level access, well, who needs to view cases and work with this? Who needs to manage cases and work with this? Who needs to be able to do this? Who needs to see opportunities and opportunity line items versus who needs to edit them? Who needs to be able to approve changes for this? Who needs to work for this? There's a couple different places where you come in, but basically if it's something that has to run across multiple roles in the organization, and it's going to be that kind of common thread, this is where you really can use a permission set, because again, that creates your reusability. So if you break your permission set down into something where you can reuse it, and it goes across multiple groups having to do the same kinds of things, then it comes in. The key thing here is naming it appropriately to something like, so again, view cases, edit cases. That's pretty clear and straightforward. If it has to be a little bit more complex because it runs across multiple objects, give it a name that relates to that business process. This is new account approvers. This is the discount approvers. This is the people who can edit the payout for sales reps, the commission that they get on a sale. Sales reps tend to get really touchy about who can edit it because they want to edit their own, but they don't want anyone else to be able to edit it. So tend to have organizations that come across this. This is where what I call the persona madness comes in. And this really kind of comes in handy. So from this, you can kind of look at it. Essentially, we'll look at a more detailed version of this here in just a second. But basically, this is kind of that combination of looking at it from a persona base. You can kind of see where this is coming in from the outside and coming in. This is an exercise that's not always something you want to do every single time, but can be useful for kind of that first time. And let me minimize this, and we'll present for this. And now let me zoom in a bit here. All right, so let's talk about our different areas here. So for example, I've got my things like the account layouts, page layout. My page layout assignments, we know those have to be in profile. So on my left-hand side, I have everything profile related. On my right-hand side, I have permission sets and permission set groups that are here. So you'll notice things like, for example, my account layouts, contact layouts, they come up under page layout assignments. In some cases, this is what I usually use to say, okay, these are the things that are back here. Frequently for a profile, these are going to be the same, so you can reuse this left-hand side a lot. Things like login IP ranges, login times, this can be really useful exercise when you're first trying to figure out how to use stuff. Things like those profile system settings, the things that everyone can use. Run reports, use chatter. If everyone's going to run reports, don't bake it into a permission set. It goes in the profile. And then if we have your persona here in the middle. Now on the right-hand side, you'll look at this and kind of see, here under finance, for example, I've got permission set 1, 2, and 3 that came into this permission set group that I have assigned to them. I also have this executive oversight, which is a permission set group, and that gives them permission set 4 and 5. And they're also in the ombudsman persona because these are things that run across multiple departments. And so from an ombudsman perspective, they have a role that runs in across multiple departments. So for this person, they've got things that are hitting in several different areas. And say executive oversight, maybe this is giving view all on a bunch of different records, and this is view all on a bunch of different records coming together. But the thing that you can come in here is for ombudsman, say they need to have permission set group 1, which, hey, we use that up here. Permission set group 6, which is new and unique to this one. A muting permission 1, because we added or we took away a certain permission for this group, and we're able to reuse permission set 5. So say we need to let them see all cases, but we don't let them see down below the case for any of the child records. We can actually mute that in permission. So as we walk through this, this is kind of a useful way of thinking through your stuff. You can play around with it. It's a really simple, quick template to set up in Lucidchart or Visio or something like that. You can draw it on the back of a napkin, but it comes in really handy to think about, well, how things are coming together, what kind of permission sets you've got, and how these things are all connected to figure out what a user needs to access, especially when you're starting up with a new user, a new persona or profile. It can be really useful to jump in and have that whole access there.
Are you able to, I know I'm going to get asked this question immediately after this meeting, are you able to share a copy of that Persona Madness Lucidchart? I know I'm going to get
I am able to share it. I charge $75 per access to it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I actually share it. And then the other thing is I can also export it into a Visio file, so you can use it under Visio and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really useful, simple thing to kind of jump into, to be able to get into stuff. Any kind of question on the Persona Madness, the brackets, and how I talk about thinking through what you would label as a persona or what you would label as a permission set groups, any kind of oddball scenarios in your own organizations that you're like, well, we have this and we have this, and I just can't figure out how I'd break this up. You know, anything like that. Come on, challenge me. Give me something.
Modify all being required on every single thing to do anything in Salesforce. That's a system term.
I actually made the joke when they had Dreamforce and Cheryl Feldman, who's in finance area, and she was talking about, she was like posting, she's like, really, is the stuff on Salesforce security only happening at like an APAC time zone? And I'm like, you know, it's appropriate. Salesforce security keeps so many of us up late at night all the time anyway. They just figure you're probably already awake to watch the session then.
That's true. I've never noticed how late at night all the alerts come from Salesforce security. So that's accurate.
All right. So anyone got some fun stuff, things to figure out, other stuff like that they want to go through? No challenges, no interesting stuff.
Feel free to jump up and ask Mark anything. Just turn on your mic and ask him questions. He's very knowledgeable about a lot of things Salesforce.
Hey, Mark, you've made no mention of FLS so far. I'm assuming that's entirely outside the realm of things, just as it is with permission sets.
No, I mean, field level security is in the permission sets.
Oh, okay. I'm going to look at interface. Just picturing it in my head. Thank you.
So the catch there is field level security is in permissions. It's in permission sets. It's in profiles. Therefore, it's in permission set groups. The catch is it depends on your Salesforce org type, because not all additions give you field level security access. So that's usually one of the distinctions, and when they talk about it, not everyone gives you FLS, not all of them. Pro editions do not have field level security. The Salesforce Essentials editions do not have field level security. So you got object, it's an all or nothing type of thing in those worlds, but you don't get to work with field level security in those.
Are there any special considerations with, say, muting and FLS? Is that something that can be employed for that?
It can be. You can actually mute a particular field on there and say, okay, so we've had these common example. So lots of organizations, when GDPR came out, became really conscious about the birth date field. And who could access that? They had good reason to have it and fill it out. Yeah, there were some places that were like, yeah, we want to be able to send a birthday card. Other places were like, no, we have a legal reason why we have to track the birth date field. That's a really good circumstance for a muting permission where it was already in there. They've already probably given it on every permission set they've had for the contact object, but now they need to come back and take away access to that field because most people shouldn't see that. So that's an example of field level security. It falls in the same thing. You can mute any of the field level security permissions. You can say, I don't have this. One of the drawbacks of permission set and permission set groups, you cannot add them directly when you add in a new object. So you add a new field in Salesforce and you say, all right, I've got a new field. Which profiles can I add it to? Right now, you can only add that on a profile. You can't add that to a permission set, and therefore you can't add it to a permission set group in that screen. It is an extra step to go do that. There is actually a tool that I can show here that helps with that, though. That works with being able to do that. That's actually kind of, I think, my next slide here. But that is one of the gaps. And the last time I heard from their product manager was one of the things they were trying to address was making it easier to select the permission set that you wanted a field to apply to when you created the field, because plain and simple, you do that. The other thing is, for example, lots of things are built around profiles originally. Even Salesforce Field Service, like when I did training for that, they had lots of things around, well, this is based on profile. So we had to create like 4 different profiles because It was just changing what options they had on a drop-down list, like which statuses they could choose on a list for a particular record was based on the profile. And it's like, but this was built in recent time, right? But then again, it's also all Visual Force, so that was not the first thing I'm like, wow, what an anachronism here. But
Hey, Mark, this is George.
when talking about trying to do this,
I'm sorry, this is George. A quick follow-up on that. My logic is off somewhere. Yeah. Tell me where I'm making the mistake. So, true or false? So true. Profiles grant permissions, and permission sets can only add to profiles. They cannot take away from what a profile has. You're just adding new functionality, new permissions, correct?
Correct.
So when you mute on a permission set group, you're muting something that you've added with that permission set group. So the distinction that I see between field level security, which is that trump card, you do not have access to that field through field level security, trumps everything.
Right.
But muting cannot take away something that is in a person's profile. Is that correct?
Well, keep in mind the scope of muting is that permission set group. So if you give them a second permission set group, it doesn't mute. Right.
Yeah, if my profile
which is both good thing and bad thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Which can be both a good thing and a bad thing, right? This group of people as a whole should not have access to it, but this group of people or this particular person, because they have a unique role, says they should have access to it. It's there. So it has a good thing and a bad thing. It's not a definitive no. So it's not a definitive deny. It does not, as soon as you add it to that, it doesn't take away from everywhere else they have it. So if they get field level security access to it from the profile, they still have access to it. If they get it from other permission set or permission set group, they still have access to it. It only mutes it within that group. And that's why having a resultant set of permissions for a user or something like that where I can put in and go, all right, here's this person who's got these profiles, these permission sets, this thing, and be able to put that person in and go, all right, here's the resultant set of what they can access would be great. It does not exist in a Salesforce tool. It does, however, exist in a tool called, oh, my brain is blanking on it. It's a Heroku tool, Perm Comparator. And there's a Heroku tool called Perm Comparator that is really, really useful for analyzing the permissions that someone has access to based on combining profile, permission set, things that are similar, things that are different, et cetera, for what they have access to. So that's another one. We can demo that one here in just a little bit real quick. This as a piece, permission helper, was called profile and permission set helper. Now they call it just permission helper. They've redone a little bit of work. They have updated this thing so it actually works again. But this is a tool that will actually let you convert profiles to permission sets. It's got a permission analyzer, which lets you see where a permission is used. It has its own app that's in there, and it creates a new permission set. The permission analyzer is which users have access to what permissions in one stream. So the idea being is you can select a permission and say, okay, all these users have access to this as a result of this profile, this permission set, et cetera. So you can see who has access to it across those items and effectively eliminate them. But it is still true that if one item gives them access to that field, then the muting does not disable that. So this is where that comes in with being able to work with stuff. The other thing that's really nice about this, if you've ever had to switch user licenses and start over again with a new profile, new permission set, et cetera, because you got a new license, you start off with customer community, and now you need customer community plus. This is a tool that can help with that. It is free. It is from Salesforce Labs. They have a short video that makes it really useful. This is something that I kind of recommend. It gets updated regularly. They finally realized that Salesforce Labs did not mean that they could put it out there and abandon it. It now means that the stuff that they're actually putting out there, it's just things that are kind of outside the development channel because they may or may not be relevant to people. So they're not baking it into the platform. But there's lots of stuff out here on Salesforce Labs. And if you're not familiar with Salesforce Labs or looking out there, you are missing opportunities for some really quick wins for your org. I can guarantee you, if you browse there's a Salesforce Labs piece, and if you take a look at that, you will probably find something that's like, hey, I could use this in my org. So that's one of the tools that I want to share for working with this. The one I want to spend a little bit more time on here is this Cloud Toolkit. Any of you fans of Cloud Toolkit, have you used this thing?
I haven't used that, but it
Anyone
looks
heard of this but haven't really used it?
Is that the colors for internet creations? I see bright.
It is the colors for internet creations, but this is not internet creations. Who does this?
Okay, that's what I was trying to
This is Ben Edwards, who's in New Zealand, who keeps this thing up. He does it as a community thing. He takes donations to help support it. It is a fantastic tool, and I kick a donation his way every once in a while whenever I can. These are things that are built on Heroku. You can get them and install them on your own Heroku instance, as well as others. There's a cool thing here. This org doctor is kind of like the Salesforce Optimizer report. It has some things that the Optimizer report doesn't. This org comparison is fantastic. This compares metadata between two Salesforce organizations. This is, hey, I can't figure out why this is different between this sandbox and this sandbox. I deployed it, but this worked here and doesn't work here. This org comparison can be the tool to help you figure that out. Data comparison. This is actually really great. So any of you work with something like CPQ. CPQ does all of its configuration in Salesforce data. So if you're not moving the data from your Salesforce org to Salesforce org, it doesn't work. This data compare tool can actually allow you to figure out the difference between them. Field creators is kind of an automated field creator that comes in. Config switch that lets you turn things on and off, like validation rules, workflow rules, Apex triggers. It's going to be great when you're trying to do a deployment. You need to cut everything off, push stuff into the new org, and cut it back on. This actually gives you a switch where you can turn it off and then flip another switch and turn it all back to the way that it was before. Schema Lister is the tool that we're going to use tonight. And this package builder, this can be useful if you need to build a package.xml file to work with and need a visual tool. There's others that kind of work better than this one, but this is a good one for now. This code scanner looks for some different things in Apex, and it could be a good shot if you've had a developer who works with stuff and you don't know much about Salesforce Apex, but you got some questions about their code. Maybe you can run this and check and see, okay, why are you doing this? And why am I getting this error? And what's happening here? Schema Lister is a really cool tool, though. It is extremely handy. This is the dev org that I'm working with, but dev orgs are still considered production orgs in the Salesforce world. You log in through OAuth. As with any tool that's outside recommended here, I typically recommend people to not connect it to their production instance with data in it unless they trust it. Ben actually has instructions on how you can spin up your own Cloud Toolkit on Heroku yourself out there, with it being really quite easy. So if you have a company where you want to have this own set of tools for yourself to do, you can spin it up on Heroku on a free Heroku instance for next to nothing.
Why haven't
including field usage.
I've worked with you for close to 2 years and you've never mentioned this to me. I'm upset.
You've never asked or run into anything that this would fix.
I've compared
with
so
me
many orgs and sandboxes.
Well, yeah, but you didn't talk to me about that. You want to know the trick that actually gets everyone the first time they see it and they realize how much of their life they've missed by dealing with stuff? This is literally a stupid lightning trick. I'm always amazed with people who've never seen this before, and only partially amazed because I hadn't seen it before until someone showed this to me in a class, and I'm like, where have you been all my life? So if you go to a record in Salesforce and you're going to type in a number field, I have to have a contact in here somewhere. All right, so if I come in here and I've got a contact and I add them, and I've got I have something with a number here. Maybe I should go to an account because I've got dollar amount fields in account. All accounts. So I come in here, I've got my details. This is a very generic org, so it still has that default where related is the front page for no reason. I swear I think they just put that in. So did you know, stupid lightning trick, did you know 350M just immediately made it 350 million.
Wait, so are you typing like an M at the end?
I'm typing, yes.
Is that because of the toolkit, or is that just innate Lightning functionality?
Nope, this is a basic Lightning trick. If I put in here 9M, oh, sorry, employees is not a number field, it's just a text field, actually. If I put in here 9M, it makes it 9 million. Any of you ever seen that before?
I think that actually works in Classic too, but it doesn't work until you save the record. If you put in like 9K, it converts it to, yeah.
Right. So if you do it in Classic, it will do it and it will save. But this is just a basic Lightning trick. This is actually a JavaScript trick that happens in Lightning. It works. They actually added what you can do. So you can put in billion and I think trillion also work, which were not the case up under the Classic. So Classic didn't have all the same letters there, but this is one of those tricks. If you think about how many times in your life you've had to enter extra zeros and waste it, and the second you find this trick, it flashes before your eyes, and you're like, really? Why isn't this taught like basic training? Like, why is this a Trailhead module? So that's my stupid Lightning trick.
And
so
it works with
I probably should have done that while this was.
It works with decimals as well, like 9.5M, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So if you put 9.5M, it makes it 9,500,000. Yep.
Yeah. And about I have
that's my
in orgs before with Toolkit, where there was so much metadata that Toolkit said, nope, I'm sorry, I can't help you here. There's just too much going on.
Yes, that does happen. I have been there before. It has happened. Some cases, it's just a unique kind of thing. So one of the things that when this does, when you query, I'm going to go ahead and pull up. I think I've got another version where I exported this before the last time I did this session, but let's see. Oh, no, other computer. Okay, so that's on the other computer. That's on the work computer, which is what I'm not on tonight. So usually this takes and runs. The nice thing is if you get the usage data, this may not be necessary for what we're going to do with this, but that usage data can be like it's on this page layout, this page layout, this page layout for this field. It is used in this class. It's in this process builder. It's in this workflow rule. It is in this validation rule. It is wherever it is. So I spit out the usage data. Takes longer, not exactly useful. You can also select manage package. Just keep in mind, manage package, you can export it, but you're not getting all the information. So usefulness, what happens is this goes through queries and gives you in Excel format a spreadsheet of the objects and fields in your Salesforce org.
Hey, Mark,
if you pick the manage package,
just to jump in right here, a 4-minute warning so we can open up the floor for Q&A and networking.
Yeah, so when this runs, the typical way that I work through this, and you know what, I'm just gonna, while that runs, I'll show this later. You know what, I don't have Excel on this computer, do I? I do not. All right, so let's do this in Google Sheets. So the way I would normally do this is typically come in, create a sheet, and the way I typically do this is my first tab that I create is gonna be my overall permissions, right? So this is personas and permissions. The next tab I do is going to be that schema dump. And, you know, once that opens up, I'll show it in just a second. But what we get here, this is your personas and permissions. So this is your actual object and system permissions. So there is a tool that's out there that does this in a much more easy fashion, but the way I typically would do this when I'm trying to figure out this from a user is I might start and go, here's the persona, And now I'm going to get into what permissions they would have. So here's the profile that they're using as their base typically. And here is the, I meant this to be on the same row. Cooperate. All right. And delete. All right. And profile. And this would be the permission set of, so view, cases, or maybe service data, because I'm going to give them access to view cases and milestones and entitlements and other stuff. And now I've got the edit service data. And then I come in here and go, you know, view contacts, maybe manage contacts and accounts. So maybe everyone can see all accounts and see all the fields on accounts, but who can manage them and the fields there is a little bit different. So these might be permission sets that I have or permission sets that I'm using to kind of combine. And my persona now here is I need to know which profile they might have for their base that goes along with it, or profiles that go along with this, I should say. But then I come here and I might be, so finance. And does finance need to view service data? Yes, they do, because they are working with the cases. They need to see the field service records and other stuff. Do they need to edit the service data? No, they don't. Do they need to view contacts? Yes, they do. Do they need to manage contacts and accounts? Well, we're managing our accounts payable information in here. So yes, they need to be able to have those permissions. If I come in here and do, you know, audit department, they need to view service data. Yes, because they view everything. Edit, no. View contacts, yes. Manage contacts and accounts, no. So the idea is I start breaking this down into the different pieces here where I've got this. And then on this tab, I start breaking down the individual permissions. That's where this export from Schema Lister really helps. So for example, this has done it with the single tab. I usually like to do the single tab for my permissions. It's going to output an XLSX file, and I can then open show in folder, and I have to actually toss this into Google Drive, but let's do this. Okay, real quick, I'm the gun here.
How much longer will
File.
this finish this thought, Mark?
Roughly about 30 seconds.
Okay, we can wait 30 more seconds. Then
Okay. So what this does is it spits out your Excel file, and you've got things like the object name, the field, the this, that, the other. And the next thing I do, the field usage, this is great. Like I said, I don't need it for this case. Sometimes whether it's a formula field, if there's a formula, the help text, etc., those are great. But from a, yes, I know you can edit in GC. Thank you. You can clear columns, etc. But the way that I typically work with this is after getting the things that I want in here, my API names, the other stuff like that for these fields, I then take and put in which different permission sets I'm making. So this would correspond to the view service data. And this would be the manage or the edit service data. And I would go through and then check through on my individual enable filtering. And now I come through and go, okay, so this is cases. I'm going to take and I'm going to select cases. I'm going to take and select account. I'm going to take and select contact. I'm going to take and select all these individual ones. And I'm now going to go through and by field and say, can it edit or not? Can it see it or not? So it's there. The other thing is if you happen to have Windows and have a company that will pay for it, there's actually this really cool tool out there called Security to Zen. Zen.net, I think.
I'm actually going to stop you right there, Mark, just so we can wrap up and give the...
I can't demo this product, but this is actually a tool that will do this for you and spit it out in an Excel spreadsheet. It also helps you move it. So if you have a company that will pay money for it, this is a good tool. Otherwise, kind of no-go. But
awesome. Thank you, Mark.
And that was the last thing.
That was all very educational. I'm going to pass the floor on over to Chris, but I'm going to share my screen really quick. for him?
Yeah, so Seth, so thank you, and thank you, Mark. That was awesome. I'm not gonna lie, when permission set groups came out a year and a half, however long ago it was, I was like, I don't know. But after seeing your presentation tonight, I've come up with a couple of use cases where I'm like, yeah, I could use that. So thank you very much. Real quick wrap up items. First and foremost, Cindy mentioned this in the beginning. If you live in Austin or the Austin metro area and you were impacted by the winter storms, and maybe you need a little bit of assistance in some way, please reach out to either Zach or myself or Cindy. We received some funds from Salesforce to help out with the winter storm, and everything that went on last week. So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're safe. If you need some help with anything, reach out to us individually, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, really quick, a couple other things. We like to do these at the end of meetings. So first, we'd like to open things up for anybody out there who has any Salesforce positions that they are looking to fill. If you are trying to fill a Salesforce position, feel free to speak now. You've got a bunch of people who are some Salesforce experts. Anybody? All right, I'm going to assume that's a no. And the flip side of that coin is there anyone on the call that is looking for a Salesforce related job? If you are looking to get into the Salesforce ecosystem, speak up. Maybe there's somebody out there who is interested in hiring you. Anybody?
Hi, this is Sophia Cantrell. I'm actually in the process of looking for an admin job.
Okay, awesome. Do you have the admin cert by chance?
Yes, I do. I'm a Salesforce admin. I'm certified, and I've got a lot of experience as a business analyst as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophia. What I would suggest is keep coming to these meetings, because we're going to do this on a regular basis. And we oftentimes do have people that are looking for folks. So thank you for speaking up tonight, and please keep coming.
And
Anybody else?
For Sophia.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Sophia.
Someone.
I actually work with Cindy at Verbo, so she knows me very well.
Oh, awesome.
And coming out of the business partner, business operations area, sales ops, service ops, whatever, I find that transition into the Salesforce ecosystem just to be so strong, because the technical skills are great, especially if you're learning them kind of like on the fly or whatever, but the technical skills are only as strong as your understanding of the business.
Exactly.
And so I find that to be a very, very strong partnership. And so yeah, Sophia, let me know how I can help.
So Amy,
thank you, I appreciate it.
So Sophia, in the chat, Amy Kerbo-Gorham, when you said you're looking for an admin job, she dropped her company, Q2 eBanking. They're hiring a Salesforce admin. So I recommend connecting with Amy on LinkedIn, because the referral goes a lot further than just going through the ATS.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. I think Cindy, Zach, those are all of the announcements that that I had. Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't miss anything. Just if you know anyone that feels financially insecure right now, the thought of buying food or diapers or essentials stresses them out due to the recent disaster that happened in Texas, please reach out to me, Cindy, Chris. We're not gonna gatekeep or ask for any information. You can be as private as you want. You can share as much as you want. We won't ask questions. We have this budget from Salesforce. It's not a huge budget, so please reach out to us so we can use it and don't lose it. So we're very willing to help out if that's the case. But I think that consists of everything, but I still wanted to open up the floor just for networking, or if anyone wanted to ask Mark any questions. I always enjoy hearing Mark talk.
Yeah, not a question, but Mark, this is actually the first time I think I've heard you speak, and I very much enjoyed it. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Zach knows this, like, despite having a day that sort of beat me to pieces overall, like, just actually coming in and helping others and speaking and talking with you all has kind of like re-energized me to get through the day and helped me do stuff. So I really enjoy getting involved in the community and giving back and helping other people think through stuff. So kind of the helping other people out is one of the reasons why I do a lot of the things that I do.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, if no one has any other questions for Mark, I want to respect everyone's time and give them some time back for their day. If anyone has any topics for March, please feel free to reach out to Cindy, myself, Chris. Any one of us can get an event posted. But thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.